very own Eddie Liger Smith. Eddie's an American political scientist and specialist in anti-imperialist and socialist projects, especially Venezuela and Cuba. Or I'm sorry, China. He's both an editor and
China and
political.
Venezuela. Sorry. Just wanted to be
I'm
clear.
Yes, I apologize. He's
No
both an
worries.
editor and political economy analyst at the Midwestern Marx Institute. He's also research interests in the role Southern slavery played in the development of American and European capitalism and the American healthcare system. His most recent work can be found on the Midwestern Marx Institute website and in the Journal of American Socialist Studies, Volume 2. Go ahead whenever you're ready, Eddie.
Sounds good. Actually, I had a little bit of a technical difficulty here with my Word document. I just closed it, so bear with me here as I pull that up. But really honored to be here with such amazing speakers and so many people that I look up to and have helped inform my own world outlook. So I'll do my best here to follow that great presentation from Professor Desai. So hello, everyone. My name is Eddie Liger Smith. I co-founded Midwestern Marx with Carlos after the Bernie campaign ended in 2020. Also, when Carlos and I were graduating our undergraduate degree or getting our undergraduate degrees together. And I got involved with socialist organizing when I was in high school after Wisconsin's Governor Scott Walker busted up the teachers' unions while claiming that the teachers were greedily driving up the state debt with their massive salaries. So Governor Walker then turned around after cutting the teachers' salaries to fix the debt and gave a multi-million-dollar government subsidy to this multinational corporation called Foxconn that had donated a lot of money to his campaign, which further drove up Wisconsin's state debt that currently stands at well over $20 billion. So the debt has not been fixed as Walker promised, although my working class teacher father has at least $5,000 less in his salary each year. So after that experience and after learning about Bernie Sanders and doing some research into Scott Walker and finding that he was an utter puppet of the Koch brothers and other oligarchs, I sent myself on a mission basically to overthrow these corrupt politicians, or at least expose them to the people, and create a government or an economy that actually serves the working people in this country, people like my mom and dad. And not people like the shareholders at these multinational corporations. So after leaving for college in 2016, which is where I would meet Carlos, I decided to major in politics. And in 2020, I threw myself, along with Carlos, into the Bernie campaign and groups like the Democratic Socialists of America, who seemed like the best option to reform or revolutionize our system. And since that time, since joining the left, to put it frankly, I've often found myself wondering what the heck is wrong with the American left. How do we live in a society where the corruption of politicians like Scott Walker is so blatant, where the congressional approval rating sits around 17%, and yet remain unable to organize a mass movement of working people against these corrupt politicians and their donors? So the answer to my question of why the Western left has failed to organize a substantial revolutionary movement is complex, but I've yet to find a better answer to this question than Carlos's new book, The Purity Fetish and the Crisis of Western Marxism, which is why we feel that this is such an important text. The book addresses in a theoretical and honest way some of the particular stances of the American left that had never made any sense to me in my practical organizing experience, such as the idea that we can't reach out to working class Republican voters or Trump supporters and teach them about Marxism because this would qualify as recruiting fascists. This was an idea that always perplexed me as someone who had lived among working class Midwestern Republican voters my whole life, and who knew that while most of them are politically confused or backwards, as Tom said earlier, the vast majority of them are not fascistic. And many of the older ones only stopped voting Democrat when the party abandoned organized labor during the era of Bill Clinton and over the last 40 years of neoliberalism. Additionally, after studying politics in undergrad, or geopolitics in undergrad rather, in countries like Venezuela and China, I was extremely surprised at the lack of international solidarity among the Western left and for international socialist experiments, and the willingness of American socialists to condemn socialist experiments abroad, as Bernie Sanders did on the debate stage in 2020, when Mayor Pete Buttigieg accused him of trying to bring Castro's Cuba to the United States. Let it also be noted that Mayor Pete supported Medicare for all himself until he started running for office and that insurance industry money started coming in. But rather than defend the successes of the Cuban healthcare system that have been brought about by Cuban socialism in the face of a crippling 70-year-long plus U.S. embargo, as Carlos and I have done in a series of papers and videos, Bernie Sanders decided to cower and promised that his healthcare system would look nothing like the authoritarian Cuban dictatorship, which had forced healthcare and reading upon its people. And this, to me, was a perfect example of what Carlos calls purity fetishism in the book, which prevents many self-described socialists in the West from supporting the struggles of our comrades abroad internationally. They allow one disagreement or one critique or one flaw, one failure of these foreign socialist experiments to cause them to disavow the socialist experiments entirely, disavow everything that our comrades have done internationally to construct socialism in the face of vicious and relentless imperialist aggression from the West. So until Carlos's book, I had really no way of explaining what I saw as strategic and ideological failures in the American left in a world that desperately needs a functional and revolutionary left. In this book, though, Carlos explains the historical roots of this purity fetishism. And he also shows that there's been a great deal of CIA infiltration and controlled opposition that has influenced and allowed the purity fetish to develop along the way. It's worth noting that this analysis would have been impossible without the incredible work of our friend Gabriel Rockhill, who's here today, and his analysis of controlled opposition or the compatible left. So Carlos shows us that when we stop expecting our comrades internationally and domestically to attain or maintain some kind of idealized perfection and realize that we're all flawed because we're all human beings, we can actually forge a path of unity, revolutionary struggle, and construction. To abandon the purity fetish doesn't mean to abandon criticism of those within our organizations or socialist organizations abroad. In fact, it means the opposite. Abandoning the purity fetish allows us to recapture the ability to critique something without condemning it completely, to critique our comrades here at home and existing socialist experiments abroad, while still supporting them in their totality without canceling them entirely, so to speak. To forgo the purity fetish is not to forgo our principles, but rather quite the opposite, to recapture our core principles so that we can unify and rally people around them. Abandoning the purity fetish allows us to work with people and organizations who we may disagree with on some issues, but who hold our core values of class struggle and anti-imperialism. A book like The Purity Fetish is so important at a time like this, when the sadistic imperialists who dominate Western society are pushing us ever closer to nuclear war, because there's never been a more important time for unity amongst those who oppose nuclear war and mutually assured destruction. I truly believe that this is an important book, and I'm deeply honored to have had any part in its publishing, and I'm deeply honored to be here today around so many people who I admire and respect. Carlos is one of my very best friends in the world, and I foresee that continuing until we're both in a nursing home someday, drinking Busch Lights or shots of Dr. Scotch while we discuss questions of theory, geopolitics, and the state of the class struggle. So I'm really proud of our institute for putting out such an important text, and even more proud of my friend for publishing such a text. So congratulations, Carlos. Thanks for being one of the few academics whose heart remains with the working masses, along with all of our amazing friends and comrades who have joined us for this book launch today. That's all I got.
Thank you so much, brother. That was wonderful.